Good morning. A quorum now being present, the Subcommittee on National Security and Foreign Affairs, the hearing entitled Transnational Drug Enterprises, Threats to Global Stability and U.S. National Security from Southwest Asia, Latin America, and West Africa, will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that only the Chairman and Ranking Member of the Subcommittee be allowed to make opening statements, and without objection, that's so ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the hearing record be kept open for 5 business days so that all members of the subcommittee will be allowed to submit a written statement for the record. Without objection, that is so ordered. So today, the Subcommittee on National Security and Foreign Affairs turns its attention to a long-standing and growing threat to United States national security and transnational illicit drug trade. Illicit drugs from Mexico, Latin America, and the Caribbean are no strangers to our shores. The issue of illicit drugs is also no stranger to this House and Congress. In March of this year, we held a hearing on money, guns, and drugs to examine whether U.S. inputs were fueling drug-related violence on the U.S.-Mexico border. This subcommittee has also held numerous hearings on Afghanistan, producer of 95% of the world's poppy crop that forms the basis of the heroin trade. Today's hearing builds on that record. It raises a central question about the relationship between the global illicit drug enterprises and their collective threat to our national security. The United States has had a geographic or country-specific drug control strategy ranging widely from the Balkan states of Eastern Europe to Colombia, Guatemala, and Mexico, and more recently to West Africa. While each country's conditions dictate a unique drug control strategy, today's hearing examines some of the underlying trends and the related implications for United States national security. There is compelling evidence that illicit drugs create enormous financial power that allows traffickers to corrode government institutions. Bribes undermine confidence in the very institutions we rely on to protect us as corruption reaches judges, prosecutors, police, and correctional officers. When bribes fail, traffickers use ruthless violence and unrelenting intimidation to expand their illegal enterprises. Over time, bribes, violence, and intimidation take their toll, especially in weak states. The net effect of these assaults is to undermine a nation's rule of law, cripple its civic institutions, and reinforce the public's view that government is ineffective. The downward spiral of drug money, violence, and intimidation, once it has begun, is difficult to reverse in weak states. But this is just half the story. With a degraded or weakened rule of law environment, non-drug actors from the criminal world and their transnational counterparts step in and further exploit an already unstable situation. While drug trafficking may be the most lucrative component of transnational crime, it is hardly the only line of business. Money laundering, weapons trafficking, commercial espionage, human trafficking, smuggling, and piracy all flourish alongside illicit drug enterprises. Further declines in the rule of law, public confidence, and national governance are the consequences. The magnitude of money from illicit drugs probably cannot be underestimated. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes estimates that the global proceeds from illicit drugs range from between $100 billion to more than $1 trillion per year. Illicit drug money flows have been estimated to be the largest segment of the Afghan gross domestic product, just over 50% in 2007. In West Africa's Guinea-Bissau, it has been reported that drugs and drug-related money is the single biggest slice of their gross domestic product and growing. Drug trafficking, wherever it thrives, presents a serious threat to the national sovereignty of the afflicted state. But it is the intersection of drugs with other illegal transnational threats, especially terrorism, that makes it so treacherous. This so-called drug terror nexus links the monetary proceeds from drugs with filling the coffers of terrorist organizations like the FARC in Colombia, the Taliban in Afghanistan, and Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. According to the latest United States intelligence, terrorist groups in more than a dozen countries across 3 continents are significantly bankrolled by illicit drug monies. According to the Drug Enforcement Administration, 19 of the 43 groups the United States designated as foreign terrorist organizations in 2007 were involved in the drug trade or other criminal activities. In addition, drug trafficking organizations' efforts to weaken or topple local governments significantly undermines our ability to achieve vital diplomatic, development, and economic assistance goals overseas. Threats from these groups not only test state stability, but also undermine the goals of regional political bodies like the Organization of American States and boldly challenge international institutions like the United Nations. At today's hearing, we'll learn from experts about the linkages between illicit drugs, weak states, and the United States national security in the context of Latin America, Afghanistan, and West Africa. The subcommittee plans to hold a second hearing with the relevant government agencies and departments to examine the United States national drug control strategy and the planned use of the nearly $15 billion that has been requested for that purpose this year. With that, I turn to Mr. Flake for his opening remarks.